Hello everyone, today we're going to share some interesting things that we saw during this semester in the subject of approach and methodology in learning. My name is Estefania Hernandez Ricario and welcome to our video. Okay, first of all, I would like to begin talking about what is an approach and what is a method. I consider that we have to define first this concept to understand uh, the following things that we are going to see. Uh, in the case of an approach is a theoretical view in how the language can be learned to the student and to the teacher. In the case of the method, a method is a system of practices and procedures and sometimes steps in a process that the teacher uses to teach any subject or any process in the classroom. Okay, when I was reflecting about these concepts, one question came to my mind, and the question was why our methods and approaches are important in teaching. I honestly think that are important because allow to have a better structure and determine the activities and strategies that we are going to use with our students in the classroom. However, when we use approaches and methodologies, the quality of students' learning uh, rise and results in better learnings and knowledge in the language. Okay, I would like to share with you my last teaching practice or my teaching practice experience. Sorry, something that I want to say is that this in this period I had the opportunity to work with third grade students. Um, it was a little bit difficult to design the lesson because many of my students or most of them um, are have low exposure to the English language, and this was um, something difficult because uh, it, it isn't easy to cover all the context and all the objectives that I have. Um, However, I honestly believe that when I take into consideration the previous context and these points, my students understand the class and the topics that I explain. Okay, during this subject and partials, we saw different methods and approaches. The first one is autolingual method, in which um, the main focus or objective to this method is communication related to the behaviors that people have during the learning process. However, in the case of TPR, total physical response, um, we can say that it is a way of teaching that use body language and non-verbal communication to understand or to gain more exposure to the language. In the case of the oral method, uh, in this case, students listen and repeat what the structure or what the teacher says. Uh, Another methods and approaches are lexical approach. Lexical approach refers the learning process, but using grammar functions and notions in the classroom. In the case of communication language teaching, it is an approach in which students take part in role games or activities uh, related to a gymnastic exercise. But in the case of CBLT, it's an educational movement that focuses on outcomes and outputs in the learning process. The natural approach, it is easy to understand because and the main objective is to develop communication skills. Okay, the method and approach that was more evident in my teaching is a whole language approach because consider my last teaching practice and some of the practices that I had. I design activities with interaction and with the use of different virtual platforms. Another approach that I used was grammar translation method, in which my students understand and have a better language acquisition and learning process uh, for this subject because I tend to translate or help them to use their L1 language to understand many things. Um, final the final thoughts that I had was that from this subject I learned that there are more than one methodology and strategy to use it in the classroom and with the students. We are in charge to investigate and research more about the methodology that we are going to apply. However, the thing that I like most about these periods was that my knowledge about different strategies rise and help me to reflect and understand that not all the students are and need the same method to learn English. Something that I don't like about these partials was that sometimes the readings were a little bit difficult and sometimes I tend to be boring and it was very tedious because some texts are more than have had more than 3 pages. One thing that I will improve in my next teaching practice would be use different methodologies um, with my students and try to take advantage of their interest and their their language level. Mm, at the end, one method or approach that I would like to try is to use Wikipedia because most of my classes tend to focus more on listening than reading because I consider that listening is more dynamic than only read a piece of paper or a book. Um, and these listening activities can help students to understand and view how the language is used. So, this is all for me for my presentation, and thank you very much for being here.